Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins, and today I'm talking to author Jim Nesbitt. Jim is the author of hard-boiled detective novels The Last Second Chance, The Right Wrong Number, and The Best Lad's Choice, featuring Adelbert, a beaten-up, beleaguered, boozing ex-cop who also happens to be one hell of a detective. Hi Jim, welcome, and thank you for coming back on Book Talk Radio Club.
Well, thank you for having me on board again, Claire. It's always a pleasure, and look forward to you grilling me incessantly today.
It is about grilling you incessantly, but I'll ask a few questions anyway. Someone described your books as hardcore, alcohol and profanity-laced shoot-em-ups you wouldn't want to send to your mum unless she's a tough old bird from Amarillo. Didn't know they'd read Tough Old Birds in Amarillo, but okay. Would you say that's a good description?
I think it's pretty spot on and funny to boot. I decided I was going to write, straight up, fairly bawdy and violent books, and I don't pull punches and I don't engage in euphemisms. So if you're, if you're looking for a Sunday school book, look elsewhere. I kind of think that's an insult to the reader to kind of, shade and pull the punches.
Sure.
If this is not your cup of tea, you're going to put the book down. If it is your cup of tea, I'm giving you a full bore shot. It's like taking a shot of straight whiskey.
Adelbert, a classic American anti-hero, a deeply flawed character, tough, profane, reckless, and just smart enough, but angst-ridden and battered by life. Did you base his character on another fictional PI, or is he an amalgam of many of them? How did you come up with him?
I get accused of doing an autobiography, but that's really not the case. He has some of my physical attributes, but when I started writing this, what's turned out to be an accidental series, what I wanted was, I didn't want a guy who was super smart, like Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe, and I definitely did not want a super cool guy like Steve McQueen's character in Bullet. Mm-hmm. What I wanted was more of a flawed, everyman type of character that folks could identify with. Mm-hmm. And Ed Earl's, he's kind of guilt-ridden. He's got a bad liver. He's got wrecked knees, and he's had bad luck in terms of getting bounced off the Dallas police force, and he's got a few marriages under his belt, and I think those are qualities that the average reader can identify with.
No, very much so. Very much.
Yeah,
so.
and if you're looking for escapism, I give you maybe plenty of that with the violence and the chase, but the guy himself, I think I tried to make him fairly realistic.
Have you found then that as you write each of the Adelbert books that he becomes much more of a rounded character, or did he start off that way, as it were, fully formed with book one, The Last Second Chance?
Well, I think he's developing incrementally. I mean, he showed up pretty much as a whole character in the first book, and there's been some little twists along the way, but I think it's in line with his, starting out as kind of a terminal burnout, didn't think he had it anymore, and then through a series of misadventures, he finds out he still has the essence of what made him a good detective. So in that sense, yeah, he's coming back to realizing he still has the internal fortitude that made him a good detective. But in terms of, does he have a dog? Does he have a love interest? Kind of the cliche things people throw at you about having character development. No, I'm sorry. I think my guy's pretty well-rounded and doesn't need those cliche trappings.
When not on the case, Earl keeps one boot on the rail of his favourite saloon, drinks bourbon neat with an ice water chaser, chain smokes Lucky Strikes, and chases women who leave him an emotional wreck. He's definitely on a one-way self-destructive ticket, isn't he?
smart, tough, profane, and reckless. And I think he's just as reckless pursuing a case as he is in his personal life. And I think that's part of the more self-destructive characteristics are, I think a product of kind of the loser mentality he felt when he kind of developed as he got booted off the force and taken on kind of cases he doesn't want to take on. Kind of feels like it's beneath him, but he does it to make a living. And I think that fuels some of his recklessness. That and guilt and other angst-driven emotions he's got.
The novels are set in the stark, sun-blasted land of West Texas. Do you come from there, Jim? Is that why you decided to set the novels in the Lone Star State?
No, I do not come from Texas, although I wish I had. And when I lived there, a good friend of mine said, when he found out I was moving to Texas, he goes, well, it's about damn time. You've acted like one of those sons of bitches for years. So, but I used to go to Texas quite a bit as a journalist, covered a lot of stuff along the Texas-Mexican border, and that's where I came to really appreciate and fall in love with that stark, harsh beauty of West Texas. It's truly remarkable land. Feels like it's where several mountain ranges collide. You've got the Rockies coming down from the northwest. You've got the vestiges of the Ozarks kind of creeping in from the northeast. Then you've got the mountains coming up from Mexico, the Sierra del Carmens. And it's really kind of primeval. You feel like the bones of the earth have been ripped open for you to see. And I love it. And I thought it was a perfect place to tell tales of revenge and redemption from.
So tell me about the first book, The Last Second Chance.
Well, The Last Second Chance, it's basically you meet Ed Earl and his associated characters for the first time. And that one, I'd written long format journalism for many years, which kind of magazine-length stuff. And that was my first attempt at fiction. And I didn't find it that huge a leap going from what I was doing as a journalist to writing fiction. I had no idea what I was doing, but I know how to tell a tale. And as I said earlier, I set out to create a character who was more of the everyman kind of guy. And in this book, Ed Earl's framed for murder. He's kind of set off on a path to go after a guy who he blames for his partner's death, which is one of the things he's guilty about. And the guy's a very crazed narco living in Mexico named Teddy Roy Bonifacio, and he's literally quite nuts and into Aztec heart sacrifice, and hangs out in a rancho with a ancient brujera or witch and her sons and nephews. And Ed Earl's kind of on is kind of a fugitive from justice, but he's also a hunter at the same time, going after this guy. And he winds up being attached to a woman named Carla Sue Cantrell, who was supposed to be a minor character, but she wound up elbowing her way onto the book, and I just let her roll. And she's quite the fool for Ed Earl. They banter back and forth, and they're kind of equally stubborn and sardonic and cynical. So it's the interplay between the two of them kind of defines them both.
What about the second book, The Right Wrong Number? That sees Adelbert in Houston, New Orleans, and the Texas Big Bend country. Who's Adele chasing down now?
Well, he's initially hired to protect an old flame whose husband is a financier with some shady clients, and has skipped town, disappeared with some mob money and some mob jewels, and the bad guys, they are looking to pin the blame on somebody, and it might be just the deserted wife. So he's initially hired to protect her, and then he starts getting tempted by her sexually and tempted by the lure of some money, and winds up being more of a partner than a hired bodyguard as she starts chasing after the disappeared husband. That's the basics. When one of his dear friends gets killed in Dallas by the guys looking for the husband, that causes Ed Earl to come to his senses and start seeking revenge.
And your most recently published book is titled The Best Lousy Choice. Is this a choice that Ed Earl has to make, and why best lousy choice?
Well, Ed Earl, one of his characteristics is he's constantly broke or right on the cusp of financial ruin, and the guy who holds kind of the loans to his business and other financial considerations over his head is a Shylock named Fat Willie Knopfsinger, and Knopfsinger keeps kind of threatening to call his notes unless he takes on cases that he'd rather not take on, and that's exactly what I mean by best lousy choice. You either have your note called, or you take on this what starts to be a divorce case that you really don't want to take on.
Right.
So, but it has a larger resonance as you go on. I mean, so much of life is, you're hoping for one thing, but a lot of times it boils down to picking the lesser of two evils.
Absolutely.
So, that's kind of the running joke with that phrase, with that title rather.
Are they an actual series? Do people have to read them in a particular order to enjoy them, or can they be read as standalones?
I built them very much as standalones. I give you enough detail that you don't have to read book one to understand what's going on in book 3 or book 2. And as I said earlier, I really didn't know whether Ed Earl would have the legs to propel a series, but he seems to be pretty durable, and I've already started book 4, and we'll see how far this gets me.
Who is the target audience, would you say, to your Adelbert books?
Well, I've been very surprised. I figured it would be kind of the old action and adventure, men's action and adventure crowd, and probably guys from 40 on up. But I've got quite a few women fans. They really like the strong women characters that I write, and seem to like the sex and violence too. So I've been pleasantly surprised by that, and I think it's tends to be an older audience, probably late 30s on up. But I've had some younger folks, really get turned on by the guy, and can't wait for me to write the next one. And so just goes to show you throw something out there, you just don't know who's going to bite.
Let's talk about you now. You were a journalist for more than 30 years, serving as an editor and roving correspondent for newspapers and wire services in Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Washington, D.C. You chased hurricanes, earthquakes, plane wrecks, presidential candidates, wildfires, rodeo cowboys, migrant field hands, neo-Nazis and nuns. I'm not even going to ask the nuns about the nuns bit, with an eye for the telling detail and an ear for the voice of the people who give life to a story. It sounds such an interesting life. Do you miss it, Jim?
Who is that guy you were reading about? I'd like to meet him.
It's you.
I've been real fortunate, and that writing took me to all these places and all these interesting events, and I'm glad to have had all those experiences. But do I miss it? Not really. I've spent 20 some odd years on the road, and stuck my nose into places that shouldn't have, and I had a very good run in journalism, and practiced it at a fairly high level, and enjoyed it. But it was the journalism that was present when I started out is not the journalism of today.
No.
It's a business that's really hollowed out and cratered to the degree where if I hadn't gotten out, somebody probably would have thrown me out by now. So, and I find, what I missed was the writing. And by writing books, I scratched that itch fairly vigorously.
Most authors have a day job and they have to climb out of the skin of their characters and exist in, as it were, the real world. What's your day job now, Jim?
Well, if people are going to either shudder or laugh, but I do internal communications for the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a big public power company started by Franklin Roosevelt back in the New Deal era to lift the Tennessee Valley out of poverty. And I work at the Browns Ferry Nuclear Plant, which is TVA's largest and first nuclear plant, and I've been down here. I'm in my 10th year here.
Wow!
Like where I'm living, and like the job, and like the people. It's not that much different in terms of culture as from journalism, because these people are similarly crazed and dedicated and obsessed, and it's more of a lifestyle, less of a career. And I felt comfortable coming in right away.
You refer to yourself on social media as Honest Jim and address people as Chirin. I've got to ask, why Honest Jim and what does Chirin mean?
Well, Honest Jim, I poached that from a good buddy of mine, Tom Stevenson in Dallas. Tom is an ex-journalist, ex-bar owner who now runs hunting expeditions as a guide, and when he hustled his packages, tour packages for hunts, dove hunting or safaris in Africa, he would always call himself Honest Tom. So I kind of liked that, so I started creating a little bit of a persona as Honest Jim. It's a marketing ploy.
I like it. Definitely.
And apparently it's caught on because, I get called Honest Jim all the time now. Children is just, it's kind of Southern-esque for children.
Oh, okay.
So, old honest Jim is talking country at you.
Ah, okay. So I know you enjoy a good cigar, an aged whiskey, and classic American cars. In fact, you own one which goes by the name of Pamita. Why Pamita?
Well, that's in honor of my wife, Pam, and it's a nickname I've had for her. So when I got this thing, I put vanity license plates on it that say Pamita. And told her that it was just as much her car as it was my car, which she doesn't believe for an instant, but he enjoys taking rides.
I love your writing style, and it seems I'm in good company. Skillfully crafted neo-noir tale of obsession and revenge, and a raucous ride through Texas and Mexico, and a well-told tale. Also, a hard-bitten novel that bites back. Are you motivated to write from the reviews you receive or the sales of the books?
Neither. I mean, I'm very grateful for very kind reviews like that. I always appreciate someone who takes the time to say what they liked about the book and give kind of a reason for it, whether they like the book or not. I mean, I've had some kind of not so favorable reviews, but the person took the time to explain themselves and what they did and did not like. And if you're smart, you're going to take that nugget and see whether you can do something with it to make yourself better. Money, nah, I mean, it's, self-publishing game is you can't afford to quit your day job. I mean, it's, at least as I found it. And I'm, just as mystified by marketing as the next writer. You get the advantage of holding on to your work and not having it jerked out of your hands and revised by an editor to make it something it's not, but you're not going to make a lot of money. So I write because that's who I am. I'm a writer, and I like telling stories, and I'm an ex-professional, or still a professional writer. Been a professional writer for almost 50 years, and I try to put out as professional looking a book as I possibly can.
So you were saying, I was going to ask you, are there any more adult stories on the horizon? You said before you were writing your fourth one?
Yeah, I just started it, and I figure it's time to drop the fiction of Ed Earl being a Dallas detective, get him out of Dallas and get him into West Texas more permanently. And I've got some ideas about that.
Right.
And this one, he'll be a little older, a little slower maybe. But I was reading a buddy of mine's interview with Michael Connolly about how interesting it is to age a character but keep him true. He can't do any more but things he still does because that's who he is. So I'm looking forward to kind of exploring Ed Earl as he's maybe into his mid-50s.
And lastly, where can Book Talk Radio Club's listeners purchase the Ed Earl books?
Well, this time around, I kind of went wide and get them on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle version. But I also put it up on Barnes & Noble Nook, Kobo, iBooks or Apple Books, and Google Play.
Right.
So I think you can go to any of those sites, look up Jim Nesbitt, or run the title, and it'll pop up.
All right, well, thank you, Jim. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club again. I'd love to chat and hear more. In the meantime, good luck with the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Thanks very much again, Jim.
Thanks for having me again, Claire. Enjoyed it.
My pleasure.